And welcome into This Life Matters. This is Drew, and of course, I have with me GG. How you doing today, GG?
I am doing very well. How about you?
Can't complain at all. It is a lovely day here in the Northwest. And how's it down there in Tulsa?
Finally stopped raining and it's going to be pretty.
That's so funny because I expected to have to have said that line. It's like we switched roles because it hasn't really rained here in a few days. So
No, we had 4 inches yesterday, so that was we're all glad that it stopped raining now and we can move on forward.
I think for me, when it comes to moving forward and looking toward a new day and being positive, resiliency goes hand in hand because your past will always try to keep you anchored to it, as well as the fear of moving forward in the future can cause you to freeze. So you have to have a certain level of resiliency in order to move forward and to embrace a new day. So, what about you? Like, what are your thoughts about moving forward?
It's funny that you said that about your past and kind of getting stuck in it because one of the quotes I've found is my past can inspire my future, which is not getting stuck in it, but it's kind of learning from the past and putting things all together. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about today is, and I've noticed that as well in my life, is try to kind of gather things from different experiences, put them all together, make a different decision about what I want to do, and move forward with that. So that's kind of the way I try to approach it. So we're going to talk about some of those tips we have for moving forward. But when we're talking about persevering through things like pain, we're talking about all kinds of pain, whether it be physical, emotional, mental, spiritual. I have people that come into my office for my counseling office all the time, and it seems like they always write something about the pain that they've had, whatever pain that is. Today I had somebody that said on her form, it was a first visit, and she wrote, "I've been hurt by church a lot." That wasn't a major reason she was coming in, but that was actually on the form that she wrote. When we have those, just to kind of encapsulate what we're talking about a little bit, when we have pain or discomfort from in these areas, they could be things that would be frustration with those areas or sadness about something, some kind of a loss, maybe even feeling inadequate or hurt about something, being disappointed. Maybe we have an injury, or maybe we're going through some kind of a life transition. And so those are in those areas. So if we can globally look at those are the kind of the areas I think that we feel pain or loss or trials in. And so we're talking about moving through that, persevering, becoming more resilient, which we've discussed in the past two shows about that's bouncing back. It's not getting stuck in those in the area where we're stuck in. How to move on through, and that's what we're going to talk about today.
All right. So one of the first things to kind of come up is celebrating like the legacy of where you're transitioning from, or maybe the loss that you just had. And in that celebration, there's many different ways that people can celebrate, and there's many different categories we can kind of frame this around. And I think my overall point of view is the celebration. It allows you to move forward with a peace to some degree because you've now found a way to not be stuck in your past, but still have a positive anchor to it. So what are some of the ways that you would wrap the phrase "celebrate the legacy"? Like how would you? What are some examples of celebration?
This time of year is really hard for me, as you know, because we're coming up on a time when we lost our son. And when you lose people, one of the things that after you doing all your crying and your all sorts of things. One thing that we recommend to do is to have something that signifies that person, in other words. But this could be with any topic that we're talking about. I just happen to be mentioning this one. When our son died, we had a scholarship fund created. People, instead of sending, there were flowers, but instead of that, we asked people to donate to this scholarship fund at the school where he went. And then every year, a new sixth grade student would be coming in to that school, and there were some qualifications. So that happened. And that's one way that we personally did that. And a lot of people will do those kinds of things. But it could also be maybe somebody in your family has a disease, an illness of some sort, or Alzheimer's, breast cancer, MS. There's all the walks that have been created, and those are huge global, those are international celebrations of a legacy of people that we know and are personally touched by those. And it feels as if we're doing something, in other words, to celebrate it and to remember it. But you had some
because there's the everyday thing also, like the factor of how every day we kind of live. If we're moving forward with something, the pain doesn't go away necessarily, or the memories or the thoughts don't go away. So sometimes you carry on the legacy by practicing out some everyday things. One of the first things that kind of came to mind for me is if I'm a husband or a wife and I was given a cookbook from grandma or mom, and they passed away, making a choice to say, I'm going to every day cook out of this cookbook, or I'm going to use this often, and teaching people who are in positions of leadership or teaching professions. They will take lessons that they've learned from their mentors and kind of apply them to the future. One quick example I could give you of that is there was a gentleman who helped mentor me through photography for a number of years when I lived in Tulsa, and our relationship ended just based off of it expiring and us having to show each other the proper amount of boundaries for the new endeavors we were going in. Like his life was going a different direction, and my life was beginning to go in a different direction, and we didn't need to be as close as we were. So as that mentor relationship began to dissolve, one of the ways I celebrated the relationship was I taught a lot of men the exact same things that he made an effort to teach me. And it worked out great. I recently contacted him as time has kind of gone on and I've moved on out of the city. And he was kind of surprised that was one of the things that, some of the things that I was teaching others, it stuck with me and it was casual to him. But it celebrated the fact that we moved on. I had to move on, and it was a positive way to move forward, but yet still honor the past that helped build me.
Mm-hmm. You even see this nationally. I don't know if you ever watch Dancing with the Stars, but I don't miss one of those programs, and I haven't. This is their 25th season. They have 2 a year, and it is amazing. Even the stars that are on, they talk about the trials that they've gone through, whether it's bullying, or there's one on this season who cannot feel her legs. She is she's dancing and she's good, and she cannot feel her legs. And she was in a wheelchair for many years. So all of them say how this experience that they're going through is revolutionizing themselves. They're evolving and they're moving past a lot of these things they thought they couldn't do. So they've challenged themselves. So that might be another way to celebrate a legacy, is to challenge ourselves in a certain way, because this is not all about just losses. It's about moving on and how to do that. When you're talking about the cookbook, one way I do that is with my mother, and she made this certain thing, And when I make it, which I only do about once a year, but when I make it, I stand in the kitchen and I put myself back. I imagine myself back in our kitchen where I grew up with my mother standing over on my right side and all the ingredients and all that. I picture it all in my mind. And and I feel this warmth come over me. So that's a way of remembering her. And I tell my kids that story. I make that. They know what it is. They know why I make it, and they have the recipe. So that's going to go on as well.
So that's one of the important things, like you said, you've got the recipe. Some people spread ashes, other people do things like venture into if you're venturing into a new career field and you're doing something different, you take some of the good things. I would say dissect, take some time to debrief when you're leaving a situation. Figure out what parts of there's some baggage you're gonna have to leave behind, but there are going to be some positive things that you can take with you. And I think for me, as I've walked around figuring out new things and new ways that I'm going to move forward with my life, every single day I'm reminded of who I have been, although I know that I have a new future. But it lifts me up in moments where I'm still just saying, okay, well, let's figuring out what's next can be scary. But one of the things that helps me be brave, or that helps me stay focused on my future and stay focused on moving forward, is knowing that in the past I've done well. So that's something that's always kind of helped. Because like we've said, it's not all about just dealing with death. It is also about moving forward in general and
Right.
being resilient to do that.
Another quote that I read somewhere is, I want to write a new chapter. I want to be the author of my recovery. So that's taking hold, not just going with the flow necessarily, but being more proactive. And one of the ways to do that is, educating ourselves about whatever is going on in our lives in these areas and gaining new perspectives about that. But in order to do that, we're going to have to be okay with giving ourselves permission to do that. And some people are not, you may not be ready to do that. You may not have evolved far enough to do that. Or you may think it's a disservice to something else. I can't do that because it means I would forget the other thing or forget the other person or something like that. And so we have to allow ourselves to be able to be the author of our recovery and to write that new chapter.
And I think once we've done that, once we enter that phase of educating ourselves even further, uh, it helps. Like you write that new future is when you know more about what just happened. I think that's part of the debriefing stage of moving forward and being resilient to move forward, is knowing that you can be much more resilient when you're sure about certain things, when you're sure about where you've come from and you have education on where you want to go. That combination is a great and very settling combination to be able to move forward. And for me, I found myself wanting to evolve, but really having to go through an education process. What's my current situation around me? Is my current situation around me one that's negative? I had to weigh out all those things, but that went through me picking up books, talking to the right people, and doing everything that I had to do to educate myself on my current situation. And then once moving forward, there took an education process on the next level.
What was the next level for you? Was it just actually making an action, doing, taking the step? What was the next level for you? I'm thinking that the next level would be deciding that you are going to do it. I think that's what you did. I think you did all this soul searching, self analyzation of the you and the situation, everything, your family, everything. And then you had this idea that you wanted to accomplish, but you had to then after educating yourself on all the facts, you actually had to make the decision. You had to give yourself permission to move forward. Then after you made that decision, then the next step that you did was focusing on that decision and proactively making that happen. So,
Yeah.
we're calling that step focusing on your new dream.
Yeah, and I think with focusing on the new dream is that's what the whole point of this show and this the last three show or two shows have been is being able to focus on moving forward. It's one of the harder things that an individual can do. Like I think that if you put yourself in a position where you're focused in on your new future, it's going to be sometimes the one thing that's going to scare you a little bit, but on the same token, it can be the one thing that's going to comfort you knowing that you did make that decision and once the decision is made, you've got to stay focused on it. So for me, I found in different walks of life and listening to other people's stories and educating myself on it, that that's one of the best ways to make things happen is to actually make it happen. And what I mean by that is not sitting on the dream too long and not staying in the education stage of things too long, not focusing on it and talking yourself out of it. Either you're going to make a decision to not do something or to do it. And if you're going, and that's your future, regardless of how you want it to be, your future can be staying in the same place, or your future is going to be evolving to a place that you deserve to be and you need to be. Either way it goes, the future is coming. So which one do you want to choose? And for me, that made it make sense to me. That made it make sense on a level that said, okay, well, if one way or another tomorrow's going to come, I might as well make tomorrow be something that I want it to be. And that's where the focus has to lie. Do I want tomorrow to be more excellent? What conclusion have I come to that says I got to complete these steps? And if I say, hey, I got to complete these, then this is what we're doing. And that gives you a sense of worth when things are moving slower, because in your mind, if you are doing it right, and in my opinion, my humble opinion, you've already envisioned yourself there. And if you're already there, and the reality of life is you may not actually be there, then you need to be focused on that. Like you still can't give up the vision of where you're going, but you do, like even though you're not there, but you still kind of almost, you can't live in it falsely, but you do have to kind of almost act like it. I guess to make sense out of it, I can give a more practical example. One of the things that me and my wife are working on is the beginning stages of starting a business. And in that, there's work that needs to be done from this time to that time. It may not be in the actual structure of the past, but I take the good work ethic that I learned, and I'm going to take it and I'm going to apply it to myself now. And I'm going to work for myself the same way I work for someone else. And I'm going to make sure my time still has value. That's something I picked up in the education process. And so I guess that's overall what I'm saying. You could apply that to the grieving process almost to a point, and even in other areas of life where you can say, okay, what's the new future and how am I going to move forward? When we talked about celebrating the legacy of love that someone may have left behind when you're talking about grieving, some people get up and say, okay, he or she's not here with me today, but what will I do today that will show love as though that they were still right here with me? Who am I going to pour into? How am I going to do something to celebrate them and to live life kind of with them to some degree, if that makes sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of the questions that we ask in counseling is if you could do anything, and you could apply this to any situation. You might use a few different words in it, but if you could do anything at all, and there were no limitations on time, money, place, people, education, anything, what would it be? And then once the person tells you what their dream is, basically, then is there a part of that you could actually do right now?
And it's such a powerful question, because I can honestly say that for myself, once asked that question and was made to review that, I was asked that question by you, my therapist, and even spiritual leaders around me. It made me make a decision from there. It made me have to say, well, what's next? And it's nothing wrong with that. Like, that's a great place to be. So I would definitely challenge people to don't wait for someone else to ask you that question. If you hear us saying it now, you're being asked. Ask yourself that question today, and and not just leave it. I would suggest that you can share it with us. You could wherever we post this, you could go ahead and wherever you pick this video up at, be it on iTunes or YouTube, or if you're hearing us on Facebook, no matter where you're seeing or hearing this, you could easily sit down and write us an email, or shoot us a message and let us know what your goals are, or share it with, but more important than us, I would say share it with someone who's intimate, like who's in your life, who knows you, that may be a part of your circle and your community, that's going to help you build that dream. You're going to have to do that. Like, it's a part of who we are. And it may sound corny or cliche, but it's part of what makes this life matters. It's when you go and step out bravely and do the things that you're supposed to do, and ask some of the tough questions.
One of the things that if you tell someone what you're thinking about is it makes it more real. It makes it more concrete, and someone knows and can help you maybe achieve that dream. One of the things we're going to be talking about on our next show, we're starting a new series, and it's going to be about reaching your dreams, and steps about reaching dreams, and finding out about your dreams. So be prepared for that coming up. And part of the question I just asked is about that. And that would lead us right into our next series of shows that we're going to have.
All right. For us as a show, we're going to continue to be resilient, right?
That's right. We have been for over 5 years.
And one of the things that me and Georgine, we get together and we always prep out what do we want to do, especially toward the end of the year. We always try to figure out how we want to do shows. But if you're ever listening to this and you have a suggestion for a topic that you would like the two of us to discuss, we have no issues discussing a topic that would be good for you. So make sure that you messenger us through Facebook, or even if you want to just if you want to email us, you could do that as well. So make sure, because we still we have thislifematters@gmail that you could email us. So make sure you reach out to us if you have any input or anything that you would like to see us do in the future, and we will be more than happy to do it, because part of improving is being brave enough and wanting to change and evolve and do new things. So if you've got a new show topic for us, give it to us and we'll be glad to tackle it.
Yes, because we've always said no topic is off limits.
That's right.
And we mean it.
So if I started talking about our current president right now, you would feel comfortable with us talking about that? And you could keep it clean?
Yeah, I don't want to do that. I'm going to go into that trap. But, one of the topics I think we should explore in the future is about mind games and how people play games with each other in their mind. That would be a real viable topic to talk about. So Anyway, for Dru and I, you hear us, you may see us, but you'll always be in our minds and our thoughts, because your life matters. This life matters. So like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, all those ways. And Dru, I'll hear you, see you, be with you next time on This Life Matters.